This month on the Taboo Topics podcast.
Initially, what happens is people feel that shame and then they recognize, you know what, this doesn't occur that often, or if it does, I can take a pill for a little bit. And I tell my partners, and it's really, I'm living with it.
Welcome to Taboo Topics, where host Mary Frances Emmons tackles awkward medical questions with Orlando Health's top health and wellness experts, getting the answers you've been searching the internet to find. Submit your own questions by emailing the letter r-podcast@orlandohealth.com or leave a 5-star rating with your question in the review section. This podcast is produced and sponsored by the healthcare leaders at Orlando Health.
Hello, and welcome to Taboo Topics, where we address embarrassing personal health questions to take some of the stigma out of those discussions. I'm your host, Mary Frances Emmons, and today's topic is what you need to know about herpes. My guest is Dr. Christine Greaves. She is a board-certified OBGYN with Orlando Health Women's Institute. Welcome to Taboo Topics, Dr. Greaves.
Hi, thank you for having me.
First, tell us a little bit about your work with the vagina, the vulva, and the labia, and why we need to talk about this taboo topic.
Absolutely. So as an OBGYN, I take care of all different types of aspects of women, pregnancy and non-pregnancy related. And with regards to our topic today, herpes is definitely something that affects the vagina, vulva, labia, or it can. And it is occurring in all ages of people. It can occur early on. It's very common, and it can occur too even after menopause. Some people don't know they have it. Some people, when they have it, it's very painful with the first episode, and then it can keep coming back because it lives in the nerves. So herpes in my work is important because I try to help people not only with the physical pain, but also I talk with them about how to live with herpes and how we can try to do different things, including medication, strategies, and to let them know that this happens and not to worry. We're here for you. It is very common.
So you mentioned that something like half to 3/4 of the population has the herpes simplex virus type 1, which we think of as cold sores, and that somewhere between 10 and 15% of the population has type 2 or genital herpes. How did we all get this? How did this become so widespread?
Yeah, great question. Well, a lot of times it can be spread asymptomatically, meaning that let's say you share a drink with someone and your lips touched that same spot and you're shedding without symptoms, meaning you could be shedding without fever blisters, because that's a cold sore, fever blister, herpes type 1, oral ulcer. Those can be used interchangeably. So that shedding of the virus, meaning the virus that is being released without our knowing it, is a way that we share that with others. And we mentioned oral, now we can transition to the genital. If someone has type 2 herpes and they don't know it, that can still shed and spread to the other partner. There was a statistic that I saw that herpes type 1 can spread 33% of the time. There can be asymptomatic shedding, meaning that you can spread it. And because it's not like it's not like an intentional thing, but that's why it's important to know that that's how that happens. And see, that I tell people because hopefully that can help with how they feel about it when they get it. And if people have oral sex and they don't necessarily have the cold sore or the lesion, there's still that possibility of spreading it to the labia, the vulva. And I have seen some of the worst herpes outbreaks on their genital area, with it being type 1 in monogamous couples, believe it or not. I have seen a lot of pain with their wondering what's going on, because, they're in a monogamous relationship and their partner has cold sores. So then we track it back to that. I can culture it. They're in physical pain, but then they feel a little bit better emotionally, not as concerned about, like, did anything happen in our relationship? It doesn't mean that it didn't, but I'm just saying, I don't know what happens, but it doesn't mean that it didn't. But there, in the situations where people have complete trust and no concern about that, if there are fever blisters involved, that is something that I have seen.
More on this after the break.
This episode is brought to you by the healthcare leaders at Orlando Health, where we deliver the future of medicine today. Orlando Health. Choose well.
I've also read that it can be spread by fingers or a sex toy. And I wondered, is it possible to spread it essentially to yourself during self-stimulation?
Yes, it is. It is, because the herpes virus lives in the vesicles. So if you touch where the vesicle is, you're putting viral particles on your finger and immediately transferring it down there or to the toy, etc. So yes, it's possible.
So I came across an interesting statement that the emotional impact of being diagnosed with genital herpes is often much worse than the condition. Why do you think there is so much shame associated with something that essentially we all already have?
Because it's sexually transmitted and insinuates that you've done something wrong. That is the underlying tone that people have shared with me. And they're afraid to tell others. They're afraid to be judged because it is sexually transmitted. But they do need to be aware of the fact that they do have it now. Tell their partners, future partners, because it can spread. Initially, what happens is people feel that shame, and then they recognize, you know what, this doesn't occur that often, or if it does, I can take a pill for a little bit. And I tell my partners, and it's really, I'm living with it, and they seem quite fine. So initially, the shock, similar to a lot of things in life, when you first hear something, that's a change in your healthcare, and it's hard to adjust. And then once you adjust to it, I find people are just regular every day, and then their outbreaks may occur very, very little to where they're not even reminded of it.
So if you can't really get rid of it, you mentioned like a pill. What are some other strategies to live with it?
Sure. So a lot of times herpes, whether it's the oral or the genital, the outbreaks can be triggered by stress. Now, wouldn't it be lovely to be able to say, stop having stress and people don't stress? But if you can control your stress a little bit, that would be great. Now, how do you live with it? Be in touch with your body. For example, if you start feeling what we call prodromal symptoms, like if you start feeling tingling, if you start having pain, if you notice a sore popping up, make sure you don't have any contact with either your fingers, yourself, or with your partner, or don't share a beverage with someone, for example. That can help reduce spread. So that's one way. And be careful, wash your towels in hot water. But I would not stress too much about that. Don't stress about not being stressed because that's hard to control. But also, if you do find that you have frequent outbreaks, then talk to your healthcare provider about possibly going on a medication that can help reduce the occurrence of it. But let's say you have some symptoms, you're in pain, you could apply some cream with some lidocaine because it is very painful. You can, have a warm sitz bath, for example, squirt some warm water on there, and make sure you wear some loose clothing so it doesn't irritate it. Sometimes people find ice packs, the opposite of warm sitz baths, as being something helpful. Also, you can use when having sex after informing your partner, just use barrier methods, like condoms, to try to help reduce the incidence of spreading that to your partner. Definitely avoid sexual activity when you do have any of those symptoms, and just wash your hands regularly.
So, is there anything else that you would want listeners to know about herpes?
Herpes is very common, and if you find out that you have it or your partner has it and you have other questions, feel free to talk to your healthcare provider for more information that can pertain to you specifically about it, and recognize that you're not alone and that you're still beautifully, fearfully made.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Taboo Topics today, Dr. Greaves. Listeners, you can learn more about Dr. Greaves and her work at orlandohealth.com.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Taboo Topics. If you enjoyed this episode, please show your support by sharing with a friend and leaving us a 5-star review. Subscribe today to be sure you never miss an episode. This show is produced and sponsored by the healthcare leaders at Orlando Health. To find a doctor, walk-in clinic, or emergency room near you, visit orlandohealth.com.